the 14-month max data retention policy stay forever,
Yes.
in your opinion?
In fact, I think that it may decrease in future. I mean, think about Google spending all this money storing all this UA data for years. Like I have clients whose universal properties go back to when it was Urchin Analytics, which is why it's called UA. And so think about, all that data that Google's been paying to store over the years. I suspect that Google's going to push really hard to BigQuery. And then after a while, it's going to get rid of that data in there. I mean, you can still pull the data after 14 months. It's a limit. And I think that also was part of the documentation that Google's not clear on, is what you can and can't get after the 14 months. We have properties been running in GA4 for 2 years now, and you can still see stuff after 14 months, but you can't see everything in quite the same way. So I think that there's more explanation needed on that front as well. But just assume you have to set up the BigQuery connection, even if you're not going to use it, just set it up so you have the data there in something that you control. And that way it's out of the GA4 interface in case things change in the future.
Okay, that's great. And we're going to talk more about BigQuery, but why don't we delve into it now? Because I think it's going to come up many times throughout the discussion. Maybe just start off by telling us what BigQuery is and what it's used for and how experimenters should be using it.
Well, BigQuery is a database product, but it is not a relational database like you would think of something like MySQL, for example. Back when I first got started in this field, I was actually working in a company that made Microsoft Access databases. So it's not relational in that sense. But what BigQuery does really well is it stores a whole bunch of data big, and you can do queries on it. Query. So the name is very descriptive. Now, the problem with GA4 data in BigQuery is that the data model that they're using to pick the data in BigQuery is basically the most confusing that you can possibly do. So if this is someone's first introduction to BigQuery and they're starting with GA4 data, it is going to be extremely difficult for people to get into it because of how the data is structured, where there's all these different layers and whatnot. And I think that is where they haven't necessarily made the best choices. It's a choice that's been made for analysts. It has not been made for normal human beings. And so I think that this is where something I'm sure will happen with regards to make that data better. Google is going to publish something, or something is going to get out there in the world to make it easier. And if you do want to learn BigQuery now, I would say the best resource out there is there's actually a course by Simmer, which is Simo Ahava's workshop, which is he basically knows everything you want to know about Google Tag Manager. And it's called, I think, Querying GA4 Data in BigQuery. It is the course to purchase if you do want to start to get into it. It explains it from start to finish. If you don't know any BigQuery at all, you'll know what you're doing by the end of this course.
Okay, great. So BigQuery, a data storage warehouse in SQL queries, hence the name query. And we can use it as experimenters to basically house our data as well as analyze our data. Now, Neal, I know you've produced a number of tutorials and different videos on even just integrating BigQuery and doing different things in Google Analytics 4. Tell us your thoughts both on BigQuery, the integration with GA4, and just GA4 overall.
Yes, I mean, I agree with everything I think everyone says so far, to be honest. GA4 is still being developed, not a finished product. So although I agree that it has many improvements on UA, it's not a finished article. It needs further development. I also find, yes, a lot of the useful, valuable stuff is actually hidden for some reason in the console, which, is when you discover it, you think, why is that there? So I don't think Google have helped themselves in many ways. And I agree that a lot of the smaller clients find it really frustrating. And yet you can spend just a few seconds sometimes showing them how to access things. And they say, wow, I didn't know you could click on that down, that there was a menu there. There was a drop-down menu and I could change the dimension, like it for attribution. It's like, wow, well, that's really great. That's like really useful. So it's a lot of it is, I think, helping users with the fact that so much is hidden away and is not as, I don't think it's as intuitive as it should be, definitely. So I think we could certainly, it would be nice if Google made it a bit more intuitive, made things a bit more obvious and also less buggy at times. The console at times can be very buggy. There's something I call the morning lag that I've noticed. It's when you go in the morning to see your traffic and you see this huge drop off from the previous day. And if, like me, been like busy making changes in GTM the previous day, you think, shit, have I done something wrong here? But no, by midday, it's gone back to normal. And you could do without things like that, because that just really throws clients. They sort of, they're on the phone to me saying, "Oh, our traffic's plummeted. Did you do something yesterday?" It's like, well, no.
GA4 is just catching up, still
Yeah.
waking up from the morning.